Hey everybody, happy Wednesday. We're going to be continuing with Pedigrees today, and we're going to also talk about my dog because I like to talk about my dog, but also because it kind of has something to do with what we're talking about. But one thing that we didn't do yesterday, which we need to touch on first before we go on, is talk about sex-linked traits. Now, you're going to have a question on this in your uh, lesson review that you're going to do at the end of this, and I want you to feel well equipped to answer that question. So we've got two different kinds of traits. We've got what are called autosomal traits. Autosomal. And then we've got sex-linked traits. Okay. Now, autosomal traits, you've got 22 pairs of chromosomes that deal with autosomal traits. In other words, autosomal is just regular traits. It's not sex-linked traits. That's what autosomal is referring to. And then you've got one pair that deals with sex-linked traits. Okay. Now, what do we mean by sex-linked? We're talking about whether you're male or you're female. That can not only determine your sex, but it can also determine some interesting potential genetic issues that you could have. And the top one that we'll talk about here is color blindness. So let's look at sex link. So if you're a male, you're going to get two X chromosomes. Okay. Males have two X chromosomes. Now, females are going to get an X and a Y. Okay. So these are your sex linked traits. You've got one pair. You either get two X's or you get an X and a Y. Okay. The autosomal deal with everything that's not XX or XY. Okay. So the other 22 pairs of your DNA, they deal with everything that's not whether you're male or female. Okay. Now, these sex linked traits, they also, like I said, they don't just have to do with whether you're male or female. They also control things like color blindness. And there's a bunch of other ones that I won't get into right now for the sake of time. But so you can be at a disadvantage, really, as a male when it comes to color blindness. And let me tell you why that is. So sorry, fellas, we have a little bit of a biological disadvantage here. So I'm going to clear this up. Now, if you are a male, you are XX. So if there's any traits that come with the X package, you get a chance to get both of them. Okay. So that can be a bit of a problem. If you have an opportunity to get two of the same trait, and that's a bad trait, now we're talking about issues, right? So I'm referring to like being homozygous versus heterozygous and recessive versus dominant. So let's say color blindness. I'm going to use C. So big C, we'll call that regular vision, and then little c, we'll call that color blindness. Okay. So if you're a male and you get two X's, let's say both of those X's came with two little c's. Okay. So you get an X from mom, you get big X, or I'm sorry, X little c, and then you get an X from dad and you get X little c. Okay. Now you're colorblind, right? You got both of those recessive traits. Now you notice both males and females have an X. Okay. Males have two of them, females have one of them. So if you are a male, you're getting one X from mom, one X from dad. Okay. So the good news for females is you can have X little c, but you can also have Y to mask it. Okay. Whatever that Y chromosome has can carry something that'll mask what the X has. Okay. So color blindness is actually more prevalent in males than it is in females because of the fact that males can get a double dose of what's carried on the X, where females can only get one. So females have like this other opportunity to block whatever that negative trait is. And it's not just color blindness. There's a couple other things, common diseases that you can look up about this. But that's the difference between sex-linked traits and autosomal. It's carried on your X and your Y chromosomes. So when you hear sex-linked, it refers to the chromosomes that determine whether you're male or female. Males are going to have two X's. Females are going to have one X and one Y. Okay. I'm going to try to keep that as simple as possible. I don't want to go too much further in depth. We don't need to in the scope of our class here. So we're going to leave it as so. Hey, look at that. I figured out how to wipe the screen. I'm getting better at this every day. All right, let's talk about my dog because she's really funny. So this is Daisy. I'm going to show you some pictures here. This was obviously last winter. She loves that soccer ball. She thinks it's like alive and she'll try to attack it and murder it. It's very entertaining. And then also she tends to fall asleep in the strangest ways, and she likes to lay like on top of you. She'll sit on your head and try to fall asleep. So there's a good example of that. She also loves mud and being just adorable in general. But man, has she gotten really muddy and disgusting before. She also has a tendency to roll in dead things. So if she finds a dead thing, she has to roll around in it so she can also smell like the dead thing, which is really fun to clean off. It's not fun. But just, what was it, 2 days ago, she was rolling in the grass and there was nothing in the grass. We're like, what are you doing? And then we walk over there and there's a dead snake that she was just covering herself in. So that's fun. And one of her other favorite things to do is drink out of the downspout. So like the gutters, all the water comes out and then it just gets stuck in there and she'll put her face in there and drink it. So she's pretty funny. That's Daisy. Now, Daisy is actually really interesting in what we're talking about. So let me write her name up here, because she is what's called a Australian Shepherd. Sorry, that U is pretty bad. Hopefully I spell shepherd right. That kind of looks right. I feel like I'm missing something. We'll go with it. Australian Shepherd Merle. She is a Merle. You write it M-E-R-L-E. Now this is the key. This is what we're interested in. She's a Merle. So Merles have this kind of color pattern where you got a lot of white in there, but you also have a different color. So it's kind of like marbled color. Like you've got white mixed in with other colors and they're blended together. So any Australian Shepherd that has kind of this white base coat with the other colors mixed in, or I think, is it a blue Merle? They have like a black and gray mix. They're really pretty dogs. But if you look them up, that is what a Merle is referring to. It's that like mixture of colors in their fur. So Daisy, being a Merle, also had to get a DNA test because Merles can get into a lot of trouble in terms of when they're bred together. So you are not supposed to breed two Merle dogs together. It's a big no, don't do that. I think it's actually illegal. But there's a lot of breeders out there that don't care. They just want to sell dogs. They want to sell puppies. So they'll breed whatever they've got and then hope for the best. Now, I'm sorry about that. I don't know what I was aiming for. So a Merle has basically, if you look it up, it has a bunch of different names, but it's a gene that causes deaf blindness. So if you get 2 doses of this dominant gene, which we're going to call Big M, okay? So Big M equals color blindness. But it's pretty interesting. I was reading up on this, and you actually have to have 2 big M's in order to be deaf blind. Oh, it's not color blind. I messed up. Sorry. It's not color blindness. It's just actually deaf blindness. Here we go. Sorry, that kind of looks like a P. So if you have 2 big M's, you are going to be deaf blind as a Merle dog. Okay. So let me pause for a second here. Okay. So Big M would be deaf blindness, which means little m. And actually so this is weird. The coat color is actually linked to this. So Big M, little m actually have different meanings too. So we'll just say regular. I guess that's the best way to describe it. So not only does this Merle gene determine deaf blindness or regular dog, but it also determines coat color. So remember we talked about this. Sometimes multiple genes control a certain thing, and sometimes one gene controls multiple things. So this is one of those cases. So if you are a Australian Shepherd and you have one big M, so if you're big M, little m, or you are, let's see, no, that's the only way. Well, no, I'm sorry. You could be little m, little m. So these two dogs would be, they would not be deafblind. They'd be regular hearing, regular vision. This one here on the left, this would be a merle, so it would have multiple colors. And this one here on the right is not going to be a merle. It's going to be one solid color, and it's also going to be regular vision, regular hearing. So in order to have a merle with the multiple colors, you have to have one of those big M's, which is a little bit scary, right? That means that Daisy is a carrier of this gene that makes dogs deaf and blind, okay? But she's only got one of them. So if she had a second one, then she'd be in trouble. So when we first got her, she came with a DNA test. So when she was born, they took her DNA, sent it to a lab, they analyzed it, and they said, well, she's got big M, small m. Okay, so she's good. She's not gonna develop deaf blindness, but she does carry that trait. She carries the gene for deaf blindness. So here's the thing: Daisy's not allowed to be bred with other merles. If you were to take her and breed her with small m, that's fine. Okay, because if you do the Punnett square, I'll do that real quick here just to keep you fresh on your Punnett squares. If we have big M, small m, small m, small m, are we going to get any case where you've got two big M's? And the answer is no. Sorry, that Punnett square is a little bit sloppy. You only have you have a 50% chance of getting this big M, small m, but you have a 0% chance of getting big M, okay? And that's what we don't want. We don't want them to have two big M's, or else then you've got deaf blindness. So Daisy is not allowed to be bred with a merle. She can be bred with another Australian Shepherd that's not a merle, that's a solid color, but she can't be bred with a merle for that reason. So when you are getting a dog, especially if it's going to be an Australian Shepherd, you got to make sure you, number one, get them from a dog breeder that's not, I don't even know how to say it nicely, that's not a jerk. Like, you have to kind of be a jerk to be breeding these dogs and making them deaf and blind because you didn't pay attention to whether they're merles or not. And then number two, if it's cheap, it's probably from a bad breeder. You got to pay a lot of money for a good dog that's from a good breeder, usually. Not a ridiculous amount, but make sure you don't get them from some crazy person that's just got millions of dogs running around. And it's pretty sad if you look on the Franklin County dog shelter or pound or whatever it is. A lot of times if they have an Australian Shepherd, it's a deaf blind one because nobody wanted them. So that's pretty sad. But luckily Daisy only has the one big M. If she had both, then she would be in trouble. But we'll just look at her pictures one more time because they're funny. There she is. So that's Daisy, and that goes with our pedigrees that we talked about. You can be a carrier. This one actually does a better job of showing it. You can be a carrier without being affected by whatever the gene is, whether it's cystic fibrosis, whether it's deaf blindness. So that, hopefully that kind of puts it in a little bit more perspective for you, what we mean by a carrier versus being affected. So that's going to do it for this lesson. We're done with pedigrees. We're done with Punnett squares now. And now we're going to get into one of my favorite parts, which is talking about how things change over time. It's really, really interesting what comes next. You've got a unit review to do on Edulastic. It's the one out of the book, but I put it on Edulastic so that way I can get it back to you pretty quickly. You can see, how you did on those. There is a question on there about sex-linked traits. So if you're confused, go back to, I believe, 344 is the page number where we talked about the pedigrees and the cystic fibrosis. That also talks about sex-linked traits, the X's and the Y's and all that good stuff. Okay. Hopefully this helps. We're starting a new topic after this, so I'm pretty excited about that. Hopefully you are too. Stay safe, stay healthy. I'll talk to you tomorrow.